Today we're going to be reading the first section of Chapter 1, A Deadly Year, The Great Plague of London, 1665. Follow along in your book as I read from pages 9 to 14 and page 17. The rat looked dead. Goodwoman Phillips nudged it with her toe to be sure. It didn't move. She bent down, pinched its tail between her thumb and forefinger, and lifted the rat up so it dangled limply before her face. "Come into my kitchen and die on my clean floor, will you?" she said menacingly to the little corpse. "We'll see about that, you dirty beast." Goodwoman noticed with disgust that fleas were still jumping on the rat's coarse black fur. It hadn't been dead for very long, probably frozen to death. The winter of 1665 was the coldest she could remember. Turn the page. She opened the door and swung the rat by its tail, flinging it as far from the house as she could. It landed with a thud in the gutter. "Good riddance," thought Goodwoman Phillips. She wiped her hands on her skirt before heading to make breakfast. She thought no more about the rat that day. She was a busy woman with a husband and sons to feed. For a poor family like hers, living outside the walls of London in the rough and tumble parish of St. Giles in the Field, food was often hard to come by. Worse, with this winter's dreadful cold, they needed more fuel than usual for the fire. Goodwoman feared that the extra expense would mean Christmas, not even a week away, would be a lean and dismal holiday this year. Goodwoman was right to worry about Christmas. There would be no celebrating in her home. As that dark December day wore on, her head began aching, and pain grew in her back, arms, and legs until she could hardly stand. Then fever and a chill set in. By evening, she was forced to take to her bed. She lay in a daze, trying not to moan. Signs in the sky. Day by day, Goodwoman Phillips got sicker. Her son sat by her bedside in the evening, trying to distract her with the latest news from London. The whole city was buzzing with rumors about a comet that had been seen flaring across the heavens every clear night since November. Many believed that the comet was a sign from God to England's King Charles II, who had been on the throne for just 4 years. People remembered an old superstition that the crowning of a new king would be followed by a plague. "These blazing stars threaten the world with famine, plague, and wars. To princes, death. To kingdoms, many crises. To all estates, inevitable losses," was the dismal forecast of one popular astrologer. As a fresh wave of fever shook Goodwoman Phillips, her sons crept away, leaving her to rest. Soon she was tossing in a restless, feverish sleep. House call. When Goodwoman Phillips opened her eyes next, it was the light in the room. A tall man in a long coat was unpacking a leather satchel and laying out items along the wooden bench under the window. A cup, a cloth, a knife. Goodwoman realized at once who this man was and why he was there. A doctor. "I'll not be bled," she tried for a firm, clear tone, but even to her own ears, her voice was low and faltering. The doctor turned and looked at her calmly. "Goody Phillips, your husband and sons have consulted me about your case. Bleeding will balance the humors within your body. It is for the best." The doctor came closer. She could see the knife glinting in his hand. Then it was done. A smooth, quick cut on her arm. Blood dripped into the cup he held up. Her head thudded, and the room seemed to lift and tilt, then spin. "Fainted," the doctor said. "Not uncommon for one so far gone with fever. Let's hope this bloodletting was done in time." Goodwoman Phillips didn't wake again. On Christmas Eve of 1664, she died. the first victim in an epidemic of plague that was to kill nearly 1 in 5 Londoners over the coming year. Turn the page. It's not funny, it's humoral. From ancient times until the 19th century, when a doctor told you that your humors were out of balance, he didn't mean that there was something wrong with your funny bone. Humoral theory was one of the key principles in Western medicine. According to this theory, first proposed by doctors of ancient Greece, the human body contained 4 humors, or fluids: black bile, also known as melancholy, yellow or red bile, blood, and phlegm. Your health depended on maintaining the right humoral balance, or mix of fluids, inside your body. Curing disease was a matter of putting the humors back in balance. This is where the idea of bleeding patients came from. God, have mercy upon us. A neighbor woman came that afternoon to wash the body and prepare it for burial. When the neighbor removed Good Woman Phillips's nightdress, she gasped. Large red rings appeared on the dead woman's chest and back. Under her right arm was an ominous purple swelling. A bubo! Plague tokens! Whimpered the shaken woman. Plain as my hand, these are the signs. This is a plague house. Oh God, have mercy on us. She turned and fled down the stairs and out the house. Before long, there was a knocking on the Phillipses' tiny house. The searcher had arrived. It was the searcher's duty to visit every house where a death occurred in St. Giles in the Field, to examine the deceased and to report back to the parish clerk, who recorded the cause of death in the parish register. All 119 London parishes kept registers of births and deaths, bulky volumes filled with line after line describing deaths from old age, accidents, and illnesses of every kind. Yet of all the ways to die in 1664, none was more feared than the plague. For plague could spread through a neighborhood like fire. In a matter of weeks, plague could engulf a whole city, even a whole country. The searcher for St. Giles in the Field was a shrunken, wrinkled old woman. She was desperately poor and spent every cent she had on the ale at the inn. It was well known that she'd gladly take a coin or two should a family wish to have the cause of death changed in the report she delivered to the parish clerk. For a small tip, a suicide could become an accident. Even plague could be registered as a simple fever. But the Phillips family had no money to offer her. Her sons had spent everything they had to bring the doctor in to bleed their mother. The searcher peered down drunkenly at the body, then reeled away in alarm at the sight of the swollen lumps called buboes, proof that Good Woman Phillips had died of the disease we now know as bubonic plague. She staggered off, returning later with men from the parish office, who began boarding up the doors and windows. The dead woman's family would not be allowed to leave their house for weeks in case they spread plague to others. Inside the darkened house, Good Woman Phillips and her sons listened as nail after nail was pounded into the boards, blocking their window. Finally, the pounding was replaced by the soft sound of brushes. A huge red cross was painted on their door, and the words, God have mercy upon us, turn the page. Those signs let everyone in the neighborhood know that this house was cursed with the plague. That Christmas Eve, all was silent in the Phillips house. Good Woman's husband and her sons could only wait and wonder which one of them would be next. Outside, their neighbors crossed the street to avoid walking past the boarded-up house, fearing that if they came too close, they would be contaminated with plague seeds. Turn to page 17. Blast from the past. Many people have heard of Black Death, the pandemic of plague in the Middle Ages that killed almost a third of the people in Europe. but the world had suffered through not just one, but 3 plague pandemics. The first is known as the Plague of Justinian. Named after the Roman Emperor Justinian I, the disease first broke out in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, Turkey, in 541 CE. It swept through the city, killing up to 5,000 people a day before going on to spread across Spain, Italy, Africa, and the Middle East. Over the next 3 years, it killed as many as 50 million people. Afterward, plague outbreaks continued, but didn't reach pandemic levels again until 1347, when traders and invading armies carried the disease into Europe. Whole villages were wiped out by the Black Death. Crops went unharvested and trade stopped. Some historians think 1/3 of the population died in the pandemic. It took 200 years for the population to recover. The next great pandemic of plague started in 1855 and lasted 100 years. Rats hiding in steamships carried the disease across the world, causing outbreaks in port cities on every continent. Over 15 million people died. Will there be a 4th pandemic of plague? It's possible, but unlikely. Plague can now be treated with antibiotics, thanks to modern hygiene. Many cities are cleaner with fewer rats.